We all know the colonies of the German Empire: Namibia, Cameroon, Tanzania, and so on. But in fact, there were colonies even before the unification of the German lands. The Elector of Brandenburg-Prussia began seizing land in Africa and the Caribbean as early as the 17th century. He let himself be infected by the other colonial powers' urge to discover, equipped a navy, and entered the poker for lands far away from home. So in this video, we look at the early, often forgotten German colonies. How were they conquered, how were they used, and how did the colonial empire collapse again? We answer all these questions in today's video. Enjoy! The first Europeans to establish bases in Africa as early as the 15th century were the Portuguese. They established an efficient network of force and supply stations for their ships on the way to Asia. But the other European powers naturally did not want to leave the Portuguese the sole monopoly over the lucrative Asian trade. So the Dutch, the British, the Swedes, and the Danes followed suit, establishing trading bases on the coast of Africa. When the same nations also conquered colonies in America, the very lucrative triangular trade began to establish itself bit by bit. And the Elector of Brandenburg-Prussia was eager to participate in this trade. A brief reminder. From 1618, the Hohenzollerns ruled Brandenburg and Prussia in a personal union, and from 1701 this became the Kingdom of Prussia, which was later to unite the German states. Brandenburg-Prussia was a classic land power, which was a problem because a fleet was needed to conquer colonies. So Frederick William began to charter frigates from the Dutch, and he financed the construction of his own ships. Thus, a small navy grew up, with which, however, quite considerable success were achieved. It was first used in a war with Sweden, in which successful sieges against Stettin, Stralsund, and Rügen were conducted. Spurred on by this success, the Elector began to reach for more distant goals. Expeditions to West Africa began, during which protection treaties were concluded with local rulers. In 1682, the first official colony was founded, Great Fredericksburg, in what is now Ghana. A fortress was built and trading houses were established. And colonies were also established in other parts of Africa. From 1685, for example, in Arguin, an island of today's Mauritania, and from 1700 also in Namibia in today's Benin. What was still missing, however, to carry out the triangular trade desired by the Elector was a colony in the Caribbean. Therefore, a treaty was concluded with Denmark, more precisely with the Danish West Indies Guinean Company. The latter leaves Brandenburg-Prussia a part of the Caribbean island of St. Thomas, on which the Elector was allowed to conduct free trade with slaves. St. Thomas was one of the Antilles Islands. Today it is part of the American Virgin Islands. A few years later, Crab Island was also annexed, which nowadays belongs to Puerto Rico. So Frederick William was very proud because he had put all his plans into action and now had a colonial empire in 3 continents. A lively trade began in the colonies, trading raw materials such as rubber, ivory, gold, and salt. The most lucrative, however, remained the brutal slave trade. It is estimated that from the colonies of Brandenburg-Prussia, about 10,000 to 30,000 Africans were taken to America as slaves. Despite the brief financial prosperity of the colonies, a relatively rapid decline nevertheless followed in the next decades. The main cause was that Frederick William's successors did not share the same passion for colonies, and they turned again increasingly to Europe and started to build a strong land army. Especially since the founding of the Kingdom of Prussia in 1701, the colonies far from home were increasingly forgotten and were dissolved or sold. Thus, the leases in the Caribbean were not renewed and the African possessions were sold to the Dutch West India Company. And then, in the next centuries, Prussia made no more attempts to conquer colonies. The main reason given for this was that owning them would make Prussia too dependent on the powerful naval powers. So, that was it with the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're more interested in colonial history, I recommend you my last video about the Swedish colonial empire. Enjoy the video and see you next time.